Welcome back, everyone, to the Catalyst Pharmacy Podcast. Today we had Marcus Howard on with GreaterHealth Pharmacy and Wellness. Really cool story with that pharmacy itself. So he's born and raised in St. Louis, opened up a pharmacy in the west side of St. Louis that really serves kind of underprivileged, underserved community inside a pharmacy desert. Basically, the pharmacies around there in that community closed. Really bootstrap journey of a GoFundMe page with a year of getting told, no, we don't want to help you do this, invest. And then he lands a really good investor to help build out his pharmacy and really take I think he coined the term radically inclusive pharmacy, but it's really a pharmacy. Think through like how to really address the needs of that particular community. So great story, great team he talks about and their pharmacy model. Really cool, really unique. We'll take you there now. We got Marcus Howard on with us with GreaterHealth Pharmacy and Wellness. Make sure I have that right, out of St. Louis, Missouri.
Yep.
First time on the show. So glad to have you. We already wrote something about you already. So we'll make sure we share that in the show notes for this one coming out. But man, welcome.
Appreciate it. It's really cool to be on here. We use the Pioneer RX system, and it's a wonderful system, and you all provide the best customer service when we need support. And so really excited to be on the podcast.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, I will say this. That is my best sales force is the customer support team. So I'll say that. Hats off to them. They do so much all the time. They're much more important than I am, but I get to be the face sometimes, which really is all about just highlighting the pharmacies doing really cool stuff. Yep. Sometimes new, which is a good segue into what you guys are doing in your pharmacy in St. Louis. So if you could, give us a little brief overview of the pharmacy itself, a little bit of the model. We'll go deeper into the model later, and then I want to get a little bit in the origin story of Marcus.
Absolutely. And so GreaterHealth Pharmacy and Wellness is the first radically inclusive, culturally responsive pharmacy in the U.S. So it's a relatively new model that we felt would make a huge impact in our community in St. Louis that is becoming increasingly diverse.
Okay.
Across age, across gender, across orientation, across religion, across country of origin, across socioeconomic status. And we wanted to create a healthcare environment that was inclusive to everybody, but also that was responsive to the culture, because we understood that culture is a huge part of somebody taking advice from a healthcare practitioner or not and becoming healthier. So,
okay. So that's cool. We'll get more into that. I think that's super interesting. And we already talked. I always pregame a little bit with every guest, so we already talked about them. I'm reading a book right now called Unreasonable Hospitality, and it's about basically what it takes or what some businesses do to make someone truly feel welcome. And I think and they also say basically in that book too, there's a lot of aspects and tidbits they give you on what that can lead to. And usually what that can lead to is them just being very open with you about what they're really wanting or needing help with. So
absolutely.
Really, really cool. So before we get totally into the model, into the pharmacy, inside the walls, let's talk about your journey. How did you get here? I think from what I read about you, you're St. Louis born and raised. And then starting this project. You've done a bunch of other stuff too before all of this, but give us a little bit of the journey of how Marcus Howard got to, okay, I want to found this radically inclusive model of pharmacy.
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and it's pretty crazy because I'm not a pharmacist, and I didn't come from the pharmacy space, so that's why it's pretty incredible. But yeah, I'm born and raised in St. Louis, Missouri. Went to St. Louis public schools. I'm from the north side of St. Louis, which is what most people call North City, St. Louis.
Okay.
And so when I was younger, I wanted to be a doctor. I thought that I was good at math and science. I just knew that, I was going to be a doctor. My parents wanted me to be a doctor. My family members wanted me to be a doctor. Doctor was at the top of everybody's list. Once you're a doctor, you have made it.
Right. Okay.
In our family.
That's what my parents said, but I'm not one either. So, It's all right.
Right. It's like that's everybody's like, it's like doctor.
Right.
And so I actually moved to North Carolina for college. I went to UNC Chapel Hill for undergrad.
Okay.
And I literally did all of my pre-med prerequisites to like chemistry, organic chemistry, calculus. And I got to my senior year and I did an internship at BJC at the OBGYN office for 2 weeks. And after that 2 weeks, I was like, I don't want to be a doctor.
I'm not. Okay.
Nah, it's just not for me, right?
Right.
It's just that it was just something that, I have certain strengths that I want to present to the world. And I think that, the space of being a doctor was just, it didn't align, right? What did align is that I wanted to help people. But there's ways, there's multiple, ways to help people. And so when I came home, you could imagine what my parents felt like when I said, "Hey, Mom, hey, Dad, I'm not gonna be a doctor anymore."
Yeah, because it sounds like you're almost ready for. Is it called the MCAT? Is that what it's called?
Yeah, exactly. Yep. It's the MCAT. Yep. That I was supposed to be studying for before I came home and told everybody I wasn't gonna be a doctor anymore.
Yeah. Easy. I'm sure your parents were like, "Totally fine, right?" It's good. It's good, Marcus.
So I've never seen my parents so disappointed, but it was just, it's one of those things where like when you get older and you grow up and you realize like you got to follow your own journey and you gotta, you gotta do what makes you happy. And that's like that growing up moment. And so instead of being a doctor, my first job was actually as a teacher. I was a middle school math and science teacher. So I was like, hey, I might not want to be a doctor, but I want to inspire the next generation of doctors. And that starts in the classroom. And so I joined Teach for America. Cool. They actually shipped me out to Las Vegas, where that was my first full-time role out of college. It was a middle school math and science teacher. And that was literally the best time I've ever had in my life. Like being a teacher.
That's cool.
I love getting up in the morning. I love like building connections with my students, love building connections with their families. I was a basketball coach. I was an after-school tutor. And so I really fell in love with that. And really, that was one of the first time that I started to better understand some of the inequities that existed for underrepresented communities beyond the classroom, right? So there are a lot of things that impact students' ability to learn in the classroom. And one of those things was health, right? Whether it was, we had students with asthma, we had students with sickle cell, we had students with ADHD, and, managing their medication and, and working with their families and making sure that they were prepared to learn. That was actually my first introduction to, wow, there are a lot of things that impact a person's ability to experience a higher quality of life outside of what you see every day, such as in the classroom. And so that was when I wanted to learn more about what impacts people's ability to function. And so that's when I went back to school to get my PhD in human development. And that's when I started to study brain science, where started to really understand how is the brain impacted by stress, by poverty, and things like that. And once I graduated with my PhD, I then went to, and this was the job that showed me that I was ready for entrepreneurship.
Okay.
And I became a chief innovation officer for a national nonprofit where I was able to build companies inside a larger company. And so they gave me the responsibility of being something called an entrepreneur. And that's when, I came up with ideas to solve educational issues, and I built companies around them, and we spun them off to make profitable products and companies that would impact. And that was the first time where I realized, like, hey, I'm actually able to take an idea, create a company, and be successful at it, And so that was the first time that I really understood that, hey, I can actually be an entrepreneur. And so it was at that time that I met he was a pharmacist. So his name is Dr. Martez Prince, and he was a pharmacist in Charlotte.
Okay.
And he was a Black guy, and his pharmacy was changing the community. right? So it was always on the news. It was always in the newspaper, and people were always talking about it. And people were talking about how much of an impact a pharmacy can make on a community. It was the first time that I really understood. I didn't even know that people can own. I thought it was just Walgreens and CVS.
Sure.
I didn't even know that individual pharmacists or individual people could own pharmacies. And so I actually became friends with Dr. Martez Prince. And we just started to talk about just every facet of pharmacy, how important pharmacy is in a community, how accessible it is, how it's like the second most important healthcare professional after your physician diagnoses you. It's your pharmacy that you have a relationship with to make you become healthier on your journey to health, right? You see a pharmacist maybe once a month, while you may see a doctor once a year.
Right.
And so, I fell in love with the impact that he was making. And the one thing he said was, I think, I see a lot of, you're very enthused about this. I think you should do something like this back home in your hometown. And after that, I said, yeah, let's do it. And I moved back to St. Louis and started this journey.
And here we are. Open, how long now? 18?
We've been open for about 2 years now.
2 years now. Okay. I was going to say 18 months to 2 years. Okay. Yeah. Wow. So that's cool. So we don't always get the perspective either on this podcast. Usually we're talking to people who's already been doing this for like 10 plus or something like that.
Yep.
No, you've had a bunch of different variations of other jobs that led to this. It makes total sense. A lot of experience. And I don't think you're the only former teacher we've ever had on this podcast. Either.
Really?
Yes. I think if I remember right, Tim Mitchell, which I think is in Missouri, kind of had that story too a little bit,
Wow.
kind of like different journey, 100%, totally. But like a teacher first and then a pharmacist. I know you're not a pharmacist, but a pharmacist second, went back to school, that kind of thing. So it was a really, yeah. And I think in your state too. So,
I wonder if Tim did Teach for America as well.
I don't know. I don't know, but I just thought that was interesting how close to, like, how small of a world it can be a little bit. So, all right, well then let's kind of take it from there. So you move back, you got to figure out where you're going to do this, how you're going to do it, what kind of model. Yep. So is that still, like, obviously you have a great mentor, back in Charlotte, but like, so you probably have to go, you probably got a lot of different connections already in St. Louis, which is good. But like, tell me like how you started to kind of piece together a little bit of like, hey, this is what I think I want to do, and here's where and the space to go do this.
No, that's a great question. And so really, once I came back to St. Louis, I was kind of on my own. And so, we kind of came up with the idea, but like you said, it's a huge step from idea to bringing it to reality. Right. And I think that's probably one of the hardest things. But I had experience in my previous job with doing just that. So the first thing I knew I had to do was raise the money and find a place where it was going to be. So unfortunately, I had no fundraising experience, in raising money. And so the only thing that I understood about raising money is GoFundMe, right?
Yeah.
So GoFundMe was a thing where you see a lot of people, strike gold and raise a lot of money to do some extraordinary things. And so one, I had to find out, well, how much money does it take to build a pharmacy? Okay, around $600,000 to $1 million. Again, that's a lot of money.
Easy,
right?
Easy.
This is not, this is not $100. It's not $1,000. It's $600,000.
No.
Now, I've never seen or even, $600,000 or, even made $600,000. So, trying to ask people for $600,000 is something that I think it takes a different mindset, and raising money, it takes a totally different mindset. It's like, you're going big now. You're asking for a large amount of money. And so I put it on GoFundMe, and I got over 200 donations, and we raised a whopping $8,000.
Okay.
Right? And so, one
small step for man, though.
There you go.
One giant leap.
Exactly. Right. And so, But, and so the GoFundMe thing, it says $8,000 out of $600,000, right?
Right.
But what was an incredible thing about that is, one, what we proved was that it was something that people were interested in, right? So first, you want to know, if I'm going to build this or I'm going to do this, is this something that is needed, or is this something that people want, right? You don't want to build something that nobody wants.
Yeah, that's kind of your first little soiree or survey of product market fit almost, right? Like
exactly.
Right?
Exactly, right? It's not just about building something that you think is viable, but it's building something that people are actually going to use and people actually see value in. And so that was pretty incredible to see. Well, 200 people just off the cusp, I put it on GoFundMe, and they believed in that. Then that means we have something here, right? And so one of those people that donated to the GoFundMe page was her name is Maxine Clark.
Okay.
So she is the founder of Build-A-Bear Workshop, which is a global company. And so
wow,
she was also on the local Teach for America board.
Okay.
And so we started to talk, and she was actually leading a community development project called the Del Mar Divine, right? And she was revitalizing a old abandoned hospital that was once a pillar in the St. Louis community.
Is that like West St. Louis?
It's
where that is?
West End, yeah.
Okay.
It's called the historic West End neighborhood.
Got it.
Yep. And so she basically raised $100 million and revitalized this incredible this hospital that was once a staple of the community into a social innovation center. And so what she said was that, I love your idea about a pharmacy, right? It aligns with the history of the building. It also aligns with the need in this community, where a lot of people don't have transportation. They're in the lower socioeconomic status. And there's in this area was considered a pharmacy desert. And so she was like, hey, I want that pharmacy that you're raising money for to be in our building. And that was when I had a place. Okay. So I raised the $8,000, and now I have a place where the pharmacy is going to go. With that $8,000, what I did was I hired a consulting team where I paid them to help me build a plan that I could pitch to investors.
Right.
Okay. So the first thing I did was I knew I needed experts on my team, right? And so one of my expertise is in entrepreneurship, leading companies, building companies, but I needed subject matter experts in the pharmacy business to support me in building my case. And so I hired a team, independent RX consultant, and they helped me build my financials, my pitch deck, just a plan to be able to implement a pharmacy in the area. And once I did that, I got a list of 80 people that I could pitch this to. And this is the crazy part. I pitched this to 79 people who said it was a terrible idea.
Okay.
79 people. I mean, I was going for months. It almost took me 7 to 8 months getting no, bad idea, no. It was literally the 80th person that I sent this plan to. And it was the CEO of the Missouri Foundation for Health. So the Missouri Foundation for Health is a state foundation that focuses on health inequities for the entire state. And so they're like $1 billion foundation. And they're always looking for innovative ways to improve health inequity and promote health equity in communities historically that have been impacted by health disparities. And so I pitched it to their CEO, and he was like, I love this. And I think, and let's see where this goes. And so for about 6 months, I was doing interviews, I was preparing plans, and they finally said, you know what, we'll give you $1 million to get started. And they gave me $1 million, and GreaterHealth Pharmacy and Wellness was alive in business.
Wow. Now you can open the checking account for the business.
Yeah. Yeah, right.
No, that's good. Real quick, I'm going to plug them. Independent RX Consulting, Owen Bondurant and that group, great group. on the podcast too. I think they have their own episode.
Oh, really?
With us as well, man. They're one of the OGs for the podcast for us. I think we're one of the first ones. So it's really cool.
Owen and Heidi. I mean, they were amazing.
Yeah.
They were amazing.
Yeah, good. So you really identified, hey, look, I don't know everything. There are people who know the pharmacy space really well.
Yep,
I know
exactly.
my community really well and the needs.
Yep.
And clearly I have I have needs here. People want this service. And you just had I just talk about real quick to recognize the grit that took.
Yeah.
How many months did that take to get turned down by 79 people? How long did that take?
About a year.
About a year of
Rejection.
Probably a bunch of rejection, a bunch of reiterating on your part too. I'm sure you heard some stuff that made sense in some of those rejections maybe, and you're like, okay, I got to change the plan a little bit. So bunch of revisions and
you know what was it was tough because also you got to think about your mental health because people just don't say like, oh no, it's not a good idea. People are like, why are you doing that? Or have you read articles about independent, pharmacies are closing? Why are you building one?
Yeah.
But again, when you have experts on your team in the pharmacy business, it's like, yeah, it's still a good idea. You still, yes. That support was huge. Because, that's what really helped me keep going because I also had a mentor in Maxine Clark who also said, and she built a global business.
Mm-hmm.
And so, if these people are saying, no, it's still a good idea, then I know to keep going.
Yeah. And you had a great North Star just trying to make sure
exactly
trying to serve your community
for
that. So, okay. All right. So that's the journey of how we got to the origination of the business and the pharmacy. Let's go into the four walls a little bit from there. So tell us about the model. I have a bunch of questions just because I normally do, unfortunately, for everyone. But I just think about just patient population alone and how to get to everybody. You just kind of talked about how underserved, underprivileged they are from a transportation perspective. How do you, so when you think about when you're opening this pharmacy it's called Del Mar Divine, right? When you're at you're on the first floor of Del Mar Divine. That's a different patient population. We have a lot of actually heavy Medicaid pharmacies on Pioneer. So how did you go about thinking about, or what plans did you want to just drive awareness when it comes to the patient base of what you can do for those patients? But then also give us a little bit before that, tell us about kind of the model and walking into the pharmacy, what kind of services you guys found and targeted to those patients.
I think before we started, we wanted to design for the people that we were trying to serve and with the people that we were trying to serve. And so in order to design with our community, what we did was we interviewed almost over 100 people in the community who were using pharmacy services currently across the region. And so we wanted to understand what were their pain points, what were the things that they enjoyed about using the pharmacy, what were some of the challenges that they were experiencing, and what was their ideal pharmacy environment. And so we took that and we synthesized that data, and that is the brand that we wanted to create, right? Okay. So, out of that, we wanted to make sure that pharmacy was convenient. Okay. We wanted to make sure pharmacy was trusted. And we wanted to make sure that pharmacy was enjoyable. And so again, in order for it to be convenient, because, a lot of people were missing their, doses because they couldn't get to the pharmacy, whether that was because they didn't have a car, whether that was because they were working 2 jobs and just didn't have the time,
right?
Whether they just forgot. And so we wanted to make, and so there was a need for this to become healthier, to make it more convenient to stay healthy. I think, to trust it. A lot of people in the community did not trust, do not trust, big box healthcare institutions.
Sure. Yeah.
Right. Because the thing is that, they're just trying to make money. right? And they don't really care about us. They just prescribe us medication. They give it to us. They want us to take it. And that's just it. And so we knew that we were tasked with building trust between, hey, we are a trusted healthcare institution that cares about your well-being, and we want you to become healthier. And then just enjoyable. You know, a lot of the experiences that people have with the big box stores like a CVS and Walgreens, just plain and simple, were bad experiences, unfavorable experiences that we were hearing about. And so that's kind of where we then began to build our brand off of that. And so when we learned about, you know, these things, that's when we started to build our services. So if in order to make it more convenient, then we have to offer free home delivery, right?
Okay.
Just like a Amazon, right? Yeah. We know that if we want to make this convenient, we have to deliver right to the door of our patients, especially the patient population that we're trying to support. We know that we have to, they're not going to be able to get up and go to the pharmacy, right? They may not remember to, to refill their medication until it's absolutely out. So that's one thing that we knew we had to do to make it convenient. Another thing is that we had to turn our pharmacists into case managers. And what that meant was that we had to make sure that our pharmacists knew how to navigate the healthcare system for our patients. So if our patients needed support with their insurance, they needed support with their previous pharmacy, they need support with their doctor's office, our pharmacy team does that for them. And so again, when you have a pharmacy that does that for you, it makes it more convenient. Okay, I don't have to talk to my doctor as much to coordinate that type of stuff. And a lot of people just don't feel comfortable with asking their doctor to do things like change their dosage, switch them off a different, medication, and things like that. And so,
yeah, I could totally relate because it's weird. Like if I feel like I want a lower dose as a patient, who the heck am I? It's kind of the way, other than the person going through whatever I'm going through. But I just have this almost like to a naive amount, too much respect for either to ask my pharmacist or my doctor at times to go, this is making me feel this way. Is there any way I can do a lower dose or something like, because half the time I'm like, what do I know? You know what I mean? So that makes total sense to kind of be like, hey, one, I got to establish an open line of communication with the patient. If I'm GreaterHealth, right? That's what job number one as that case manager probably is, like, tell me how you're doing. Like, and then I could go advocate for you if I feel like we need to, right?
100%. And that's, And that's what we wanted to do for that patient population. And then also to sell over-the-counter products that make our patients feel seen and heard. So one of the most popular products culturally, which I didn't know in our community, was a product called Father's John's. And that is when people have colds, it's a cough syrup for people who have colds, right? And so it's like NyQuil. But again, it's like a cough suppressant. But again, I started to go in the community and people started to ask, hey, do you have Father John's? We don't like this new stuff. We want things that our grandmother gave us. Do you have baking soda? Do you have prune juice? Do you have, right? Again, there are things, these cultural products that people in our community are asking for that we had to put on our shelves to make sure we were selling. Again, to be culture responsive, that makes people feel like, oh, this is for us.
Yeah, they get me. Right.
Exactly. They get me. They have the things that we actually are going to use on their shelves. And so those are some of the things that we learned, and those are some of the things that we responded to.
Yeah, and I go back to that. I know I'm shoving this book down everybody's throat right now, but I go back to like how to make someone really feel welcome when walking in those doors is have the products, your customer base, whether it's culturally diverse in that way or just tested the way you've tested it, there for them because you just know your customers locally. You just do. So that's a huge part of it. So that's cool. So that's a little bit of some of the differences inside the pharmacy when someone's walking in. Some stuff that I thought was really unique is there is it looked like I'll call it a physician's office. like literally part of your pharmacy, it seems like, with I think that's a partnership that you have with I think it's SSM. But talk through that a little bit, because that's something that I'll say isn't as prolific. I do think some of the big boxes tried their versions of kind of some stuff like that. And I do think still in the independent space, they're learning those muscles too, a little bit with a different twist to it. Tell me a little bit about yours and your setup.
We partnered with so one of the people that we pitched this to after we got funded was the biggest healthcare provider in Missouri, which is SSM Health. And so we just talked about the health disparities there in this particular community. And what happened was they bought into wanting to be in that community where they didn't necessarily have a huge presence. And they wanted to partner with us to realize this vision of all people deserve quality care, and let's partner to be able to do this. And so they invested almost $500,000 into building an express clinic inside our pharmacy, where 2 exam rooms, a full-time nurse practitioner, and a physician's assistant, where people can walk in or make an appointment to get help, to get seen, to get evaluated, right. And so that's huge for people that necessarily can't afford to go to the emergency room, or can't go, or their doctor's appointment is so far away, they necessarily can't get the support. So they can come into our pharmacy, see a highly qualified nurse practitioner for SSL, and if they need medication, they can get prescribed medication across the room, and then they can go out being seen by a healthcare professional, get the proper medication, and get on their way to become healthier.
Right. One thing that's pretty unique about that, it sounds like to me, is it's a brand name they all recognize and it's respected as far as like the physician piece. I'm sure there's an SSM logo or on the door somewhere on those offices and stuff like that. So it's like, that's the one thing that, not one thing, but like, that's one of the things just from a, thinking about the customer base a little bit. It's like they know who that is, even if they don't like the people itself, but they know the brand. So that probably helps a lot. I do think right now, I think most of these inside pharmacies are partnered with or owned by in some way, just a name they don't recognize sometimes, that they're just like,
it's a good point.
So I think that's kind of a cool competitive advantage. Maybe you didn't even think about, but I was just thought about, like, from that perspective, locally, everyone's going to know who that is. Just legitimizes the experience, in my opinion.
Exactly. 100%. It 100% does. And I think that also shows, like, our patients, like, oh, this brand is trying to bring help. And they're not just trying to bring any help. They're trying to bring big names, highly qualified people to help in our community.
Yeah. And I imagine they probably love the same pitch about, like, being as inclusive. I'm sure whoever you brought into that was like, hey, look, this is who we are. If you're sharing this vision, then come work with us.
Exactly. 100%.
Okay. Let's talk a little more operational stuff then. I got some questions there. I noticed for I'll just say, as young as the pharmacy is, there is a deep amount of services that a lot of pharmacies are still learning about too. So I know, obviously you talked about the delivery piece, but you're already doing testing with the patients as well. There's other services you guys have as well. I think you're employing some MedSync too. So just kind of talk through, like, hey, look, when you're building your menu of services, what was one of the things that you guys had to was some of the growing pains or the learning points of, like, man, how do we really operationalize this?
Yeah, I think it's a good point. And I think, but that's also, like, that was the strength of having a SSM Express Care clinic, to be able to share some of those services.
That's fair. Yeah, that's a good point.
To be able to provide and share those services. With us, it's always hard when you're the CEO and you're like, hey, we need these services. It makes this money. And then people on the ground have a different experience with implementation. And so it's kind of getting on one accord and finding a common ground that where we can create a real efficient plan to be able to implement. And so obviously everything sounds good when you want to implement it, and sounds like, oh, let's do this, let's do that. But it's really engaging our team, our on the ground team, which is our pharmacy technician, our delivery driver, our pharmacy manager, pharmacist in charge, to say, hey, how do we need these services? How do we actually implement them in workflow so that, it makes sense?
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. You just talked about, to me, for this business and your business, like how you describe it, it sounds like the delivery person's actually a really, like, I think a lot of people like maybe kind of skip over sometimes that role a little bit. It sounds like is a really important part of your team. Obviously, everyone knows table stakes are great pharmacists. You got to have those. You have those, it sounds like, and technicians. Yeah. It sounds like you invested a little bit in the right delivery, I'll say, approach to delivery.
Absolutely, right? That is a huge part of our business. And so our delivery driver, her name is Antoinette. She's our lead delivery driver. She's actually taken that role into a space that we didn't know was possible. And so the delivery driver almost has better relationships with our patients than anybody in the pharmacy, right? Yeah. Because while, our people, 90% of our people get free delivery, right? Mm-hmm. So that means only 10% are actually coming into the pharmacy. And so Antoinette is actually one of the core pieces to trust. Yeah. She knows almost every patient. They love her. Even so, there are times where she has to take a day off and I'll actually go do deliveries and I'm like, hey, I'm the CEO, and they're like, where's Antoinette?
Where's Antoinette? That's great. Where's she at? That's great. Where's Antoinette?
And I'm like, okay, she's coming back tomorrow. She just took a day off. I'm just in her space. I thought you would be happy to see me, but I guess not. But again, that is, and she's taking that role to heights that we didn't realize it was so, right? And she's a pharmacy technician and delivery driver. So we didn't outsource our delivery because, again, trust was a huge thing. So we don't want a random person just dropping off medication. We want people that people can identify with, that people can trust, that people like to talk to. I mean, Antoinette knows everything about these patients. And she, and so she, understands, and she's also now the one that is giving them free groceries. And so we've partnered with a local nonprofit called Operation Food Search that gives us free groceries, and then we give them to our patients who are experiencing diabetes, high cholesterol, high blood pressure, to be able to promote food. And so with her actually directly giving the food, giving the medication, understanding our patients, she's a huge part of the trust aspect of our business.
Yeah, just think about the valuable too, like the information she brings back to the pharmacy, whether it's, hey, it looks like Miss Smith might have took a fall. You should check on her, Mr. Pharmacist, or you know what I mean? Like just all of the different things she probably brings, that role that it sounds like you guys knew you had to invest in it. It couldn't just be a checkbox delivery approach. Like it had to be really, I think Joe Moose talks about this a lot. He also in North Carolina, where he's got some of his drivers like looking for like fall risk and things like that. Hey, I noticed that this is, things like, and they're reporting back to the pharmacy going, hey, look, I talked to this, I saw this, maybe you should call her just to kind of talk through the different risk that maybe she could avoid from there. So it's really, really cool. It sounds like y'all guys kind of had the same mindset when you were like, if I'm going to do delivery, I'm going to do it in a way that's just more thoughtful and intentional, I guess is the way to put it. So, okay.
100%.
Okay, cool. So let's talk about a little bit of just some of the other services that you guys are doing in the community. You just talked about the food, the kind of I'll call it the free service you guys do for it sounds like something, if you qualify for this, it sounds like healthy food options, especially for people who are managing diabetes. What other services are that are part of what you guys are doing or partnering with that you're bringing to the community?
Yeah, a lot of partnerships was a huge aspect of what we wanted to do because we knew that there were partners in the community that were already doing the work. And so we wanted to make sure that we didn't feel like we had a savior complex, like, oh, this new pharmacy is going to save the community. We wanted to partner with the people who are already doing the work. And so Operation Food Search was already doing the work, and we had a common vision. We also partner with local jail systems where people who are leaving jail need a healthcare provider. And so we act as a case manager for them and also a delivery service for their medication so that the transition into a new life the health of them is still important. It's still at the forefront. So that was a huge thing as well. Another huge service is called medication therapy management, or MTMs.
Yep.
And MTMs is a huge thing where we sit down with our patients and we talk to them about the medication that they're on. We educate them on side effects. We educate them on why it's important to take the medication. We educate them on the ingredients inside the medication and what actually happens when they take the medication. We educate them on what they should be eating when they take this medication. And so there's just a huge learning curve that we learn that our patients, and not even just our patients, we learn that learning curve is across all demographics of people, whether the richest to the poorest to the middle class. Everybody has this same lack of understanding about medication and about how they should take medication. And so that's a huge service that our community actually asks for. And so they're able to sit down with our pharmacists at least once a month and talk to them and talk to us about their medication and the questions they have.
Are you finding that, because I know there's an immunization piece of the business too. I think you guys do a lot for that.
Yeah, we do that as well.
But like, so it sounds like the way you've approached your customers or your patients with how much education and trust you have to build. Have you seen that pay dividends with increasing, I'll just say, immunization rates? Like has some of this work that you've seen, because that's what we've seen too a little bit, is like those who have invested so much in like the trust building factor, whether it's through whether it's through medication education or just really just trying to show genuine concern and advocate for them. Yeah. It starts to lead to a little bit higher lifts in immunization rates.
Yeah, that's a good question. And so I guess we don't necessarily know altogether if specifically, if it increases immunization rates specifically, but we know that it does increase a lot of care services altogether, whether it's immunization rates, whether it's adherence with them taking their medication, whether it's just overall doing the things and the steps that it takes to be healthier, going to the doctor more because their pharmacist said it. So like in a totality, we haven't necessarily aggregated it across specific services, but we know our patients are going to the doctor more. They're communicating with their primary care physician more. They're more adherent, and they are taking their flu shot, their COVID shot, and other immunizations to become healthier because they trust now the provider that it's coming from. And they trust that we're not just doing this to make money. We're doing this because we want to see you become healthy.
Yeah, look, it seems like you have a conscious effort to earn the right to have the conversations, right?
Exactly.
Like if anything, I bet it's totally increased the opportunity just to have pointed conversations about whatever that is, not just immunizations, about other things around their health.
Exactly.
So, all right, man. Dude, I think I peppered you with as many questions as I could think of off the top of my head. Sure more will come, but we're running up against a little bit of the clock here. So I wanted to kind of get through that. Let's go back into like just Marcus here a little bit. So, what are you looking at, like just future wise in the pharmacy you're working on, like, or you and I know you have a great chief pharmacy officer too, as well. And you've had we could spend 30 minutes just on your staff. I felt like there's a wide range of expertise you were able to collect on that team. Can you sprinkle in a little bit about the team you've been able to assemble from a pharmacist perspective?
Yeah. So the team was the hardest part. And this is what a lot of people don't talk about, but businesses in which say I'm not a pharmacist and so I have to build a team. The team is the most important part. So, right, you got to raise the money, you got to get the building, and then you have to have the perfect team that implements this vision along with you, right? So it took actually me around 3 to 4 months to get the right team, right? We had a lot of turnover in the beginning, right? Because I'm looking at people's resumes, they look like a fit. And then you get into the pharmacy space and you're just like, wow, there's such a misalignment of what I'm trying to accomplish in this pharmacist and his team. And so I had high turnover in the beginning, and I finally, I put a board together of community members to help me select the right people. And so that's when I was able to select our current chief pharmacy officer now, who is Dr. Kenneth Powell,
Yep.
who has that vision of a quality of service for of a diverse group of people that I think everybody who comes into pharmacists and they build a relationship with him, that's why they come to our pharmacy. They enjoy him. They enjoy conversations. They trust him. And that has been a huge part of us building our brand. And then we have Mary, who is our lead operations manager, who was a pharmacist from Kenya and moved over to the United States.
Oh, cool.
And now is getting her hours to become a full-time pharmacist in the United States. And she actually started her own pharmacy in Kenya. And so again, she has this idea of, she understands the value of what it means to be culturally responsive, the need to connect, the need to build trust, the need that a community pharmacy has. And so with that core team, and then I was telling you about Antoinette, the delivery driver, who loves her job, who connects with every patient, who has really transformed the way we thought about our delivery system. That core team has been the core piece of us building such a momentous brand and a trusted brand in the community. But it took time, and it took a lot of failures in picking the wrong people to start, to lead this team at first, for me to understand what it took to really lead a radically inclusive, culturally responsive pharmacy, and the people that needed to be in the forefront. Is not necessarily the most experienced person. It's not, not necessarily a certain race, a certain gender, a certain ethnicity. It is a type of person that aligns with the vision that we're trying to implement. And I finally found it.
Oh, that's good. And that team deserves a ton of credit, which you just gave them. So good stuff. I did think that, you said her name was Mary, right? Who's from Kenya. That helps bring this whole other element of what it's like to be not from here and walk into a pharmacy from here, right? And just help you go, oh, well, I'm sure there's just so many insight you've gleaned from that she's been able to share of oh, yeah, well, this needs to be here. You have to tell them this or whatever, right? Just this things you don't know because you just take an advantage from it, a little bit of just naive growing up here, and you get it, right? And so I just think that's super interesting and very special she brings to that team. And you've already sung everybody else's praises. I don't need to reiterate them, but I just thought it was really unique. And again, I'm gonna something from a different podcast with Amina Abubakar. I don't know if you know who that is, but I think she's from Kenya originally.
Wow.
And she's just crushing it in North Carolina from a pharmacy perspective too. Somebody else that kind of who brought a whole different vision into pharmacy too.
And what was the name of that pharmacy?
It is RX. What's it called? RX Clinic. Now it's called Avante. I think Avant. Sorry. Avant.
Yeah. So I've heard a lot about that pharmacy.
Yes, that pharmacy. She's great. She's she's taking everybody on a roller coaster, and she's just leading it. It's great.
Yeah, I've heard a lot about her and her pharmacy, and I've heard really great things about it. And again, in North Carolina and Charlotte, I don't know. Charlotte must be a hub for innovative pharmacy practices.
Yeah, it so is. North Carolina in general just seems to really lean into a community approach. And really think that's where CPSN originated from.
Yep.
With, community care of North Carolina helped start all that. So yeah, it's a great journey to go down. Troy and Joe Moose and Amina and all of them have really, it's been this little hotbed of innovation in pharmacy over there, which is really cool. I would say Arkansas, your neighbor, is kind of the same way as well. They've got a strong independent network of pharmacies there. They actually outnumber the big box chains, I believe, as far as number of sites, I believe. I think that's what Scott said last time. So really cool. I think I love what you're doing at the pharmacy. Great mission. Sounds like great people. We'll continue watching for success. So before we get out of here real quick, I make everybody do some prescribables, whether everyone's prepared for it or not. So you may have to think off top of the dome. Otherwise, I'll help you out too. But so it's basically, what are you reading, watching, listening to, or what are you into right now that you think people who watch this, listen to this, would be into? Fun or work?
Yeah, so I'll start with just work, just because I'm into just trying to figure out how to be the best CEO as possible and run a business, because it is the pharmacy business,
Right.
and that is the space that we're trying to be in. And so right now, I'm just really indulging in what I can learn about government-sponsored plans like Medicaid.
Okay, yeah.
Since our target population is Medicaid population, where those people who really need the support that we're giving, I'm just learning everything I can about the population, about the services that we can provide and things like that. And so I do recommend that, independent pharmacies really gain a deeper understanding of really how to serve the Medicaid population within the pharmacy space.
Oh, cool.
As far as like a business standpoint, I'm actually reading this book called Contagious.
What is that?
And it's called Why Things Catch On.
Okay.
And so basically, and I got this book originally from my old job. And basically, because we were in the innovation space, whenever you create something new, you need it to catch on in the community so that it grows and it scales, right? And so it's almost like it's about building a brand that people talk about, that people start to recognize and things like that, and how to make your brand contagious where people are just talking about it, right? And so in the book, they just talk about, like, in Philadelphia, everybody sells Philly cheesesteaks, right?
Yeah.
Every restaurant. So it's like, how do you stand out in a city full of restaurants that sell Philly cheesesteaks? Was this restaurant that starts selling $100 Philly cheesesteak sandwiches? Now, I mean, usually a Philly cheesesteak sandwich is like $10, $15, right? But this restaurant started to just sell $100 Philly cheesesteak sandwiches. And the reason why it became contagious, because since everybody already talked about Philly cheesesteaks in Philly, now they're talking about who is this restaurant that is selling $100 Philly cheesesteaks. Now I have to go get one.
I got to go figure this out. Right.
Exactly. And so the book just talks about how to make your business contagious. And so one of the things that we've been trying to integrate is like through customer service. Like, now people are saying, when you go into that pharmacy, it is so enjoyable. It's so fun. I love them.
Right. It's different.
So now it becomes contagious. People are like, wait, it's a pharmacy that you love? Wait, it's a pharmacy what pharmacy is this? Right. And so that is a book that I'm reading right now that's really helping us to kind of rethink our brand and how to become a contagious brand in a community where there's Walgreens on every corner, there's CVS's on every corner, and there's a good amount of independent pharmacies.
Yeah. I'll say this: you're doing a good job. I looked at your Google reviews. Yeah, like 50 of them already, and they're all like 4.9. So,
Exactly.
So I think you got it. I think you got the book down. I think obviously the one I'm going to share. I've been like, my entire team and everybody who reports to me is already like, Mark, stop talking about it. I'm kidding. It's a book I'm reading. It's called Unreasonable Hospitality. I think his name is Will Gillard or Gerard. I can't remember exactly, but it's a great book about what I was kind of alluding to, and what you've been kind of alluding to, is like how to create like a and be obsessive about a customer journey while still having good eyes on your fundamentals when it comes to like P&L, right? Like where can you invest and make the journey really, really great for the customer, and it still isn't killing you on the bottom line as well.
Exactly.
So it's such a good book. It's a story of like taking a 1 or 2 star restaurant in New York City to like voted the best in the world. So what they did, how they did it, how they built the culture. You had to get a culture. You had to get a whole team to buy into doing it.
Yes.
It's a really good read from that perspective. I don't think I have anything fun I'm into right now. It's so hot. It's so hot outside in Texas right now. So we're gonna skip that one.
Is that where you are right now in Texas?
We're in Dallas. Yep, and it has been brutal lately. But anyway, it's all right. We'll get there. It's part of the summer. We get mild winters. We got to take the heat in the summer.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, as far as pulling, I mean, I don't get to watch a lot of TV, but I guess what I do, I like sports entertainment. So I like sports. I actually like WWE wrestling. That's like a
Netflix
departure
is picking
from
that up, I think. Yeah. I think Netflix is
it's like a
picking it up.
departure from like so everything's so serious, and so
yeah.
I like movies. I like Game of Thrones. I know Game of Thrones is coming back on HBO.
Yeah, it's coming back. That's good.
Yeah,
my Mavericks are in the final. We're not doing great.
Yeah.
So by the time this airs, this may look really bad.
They won the championship.
I'm gonna make it. I'm gonna make a prediction. We're winning 4-2. Kevin's over here typing over here on the thing going. He's like, they're swept, man. So we'll see.
You know what's good about the Mavericks is the Mavericks, like every other couple of years, they're always in the finals.
Yeah.
So it's like, there's something about that organization where, you know, you all do get to the finals.
We can find it.
Yeah, exactly. It's like you all find your way.
Right. We can find it.
And even have beaten like really good teams. Like you all beat a Miami Heat team with like Dwayne Wade and LeBron James. And
I know.
It's like, yeah.
We'll get there. Well, hey, Marcus, it was great to have you. And I don't know if y'all did hear, but he is a doctor now. So mom and dad, he got there eventually, right?
There you go.
So, all right, man, it's good to see you. I love what you're doing. Love the team you have. Appreciate it. Appreciate for being on.
Appreciate that. Appreciate you for having me.
Absolutely. All right. Bye, everybody.